Alex, there is a very specific type of heartbreak that only a woodworker or a mechanic understands. It's that moment you've spent 6 hours sanding a tabletop, you reach for the blowgun to clear the dust so you can finally see the grain, and your compressor just coughs a wet, oily mist all over your pristine white oak.
Oh man, the death sneeze. I've seen you do that. You just stand there, staring at the dark spots like they're a personal insult from the universe.
It's worse than an insult. It's a betrayal of the workshop's fourth utility. We talk about power, we talk about light, we talk about coffee, but we treat compressed air like an afterthought until it fails us. Today, I want to dig into why my shop used to sound like a jet engine taking off in a library, and how we actually build a system that doesn't just hiss money into the attic.
I'm ready for this. Because frankly, my current setup is basically a loud orange pancake sitting on a pile of its own tangled yellow noodles. I think it's time I graduated from contractor on a budget to person who actually knows what they're doing.
Well, let's get you there. When I started, I had that classic Sears Craftsman unit. It was a sturdy beast, but Lord, it was loud enough to rattle the fillings out of your teeth. I used to wear my shooting muffs just to stand near the CNC machine while the tank was topping off.
See, that's the thing. Most people think bigger is better, so they buy the loudest, highest PSI monster they can afford, and then realize they can't hear themselves think. What's the actual metric we should be looking at? It's not just the horsepower sticker on the side, right?
Horsepower is the great vanity metric of the air world. It's like judging a truck by how shiny the bumper is. If you want the real story, you look at CFM, cubic feet per minute, at a specific pressure, usually 90 psi. That's the actual lung capacity of your shop. If your sandblaster needs 12 CFM and your compressor only gives you 5, you're basically trying to run a marathon through a drinking straw.
So you eventually went big blue. You upgraded to that 5 horsepower, 2-stage Eaton. But I noticed you buried it in a crawl space under the house. Was that just to save your ears? Or is there a technical reason to hide the heart of the system?
A bit of both. Silence in a workshop is a luxury you don't appreciate until you have it. But putting it in a remote spot like a crawl space or a shed means you have to take the plumbing seriously. You can't just run a 50-foot rubber hose through a hole in the floor and call it a day. Those coiled hoses, I call them pressure thieves.
Pressure thieves? Explain that. Because I'm definitely a victim of the long yellow noodle syndrome.
Think about the physics. Every foot of that narrow, flexible hose creates friction against the air. By the time the air gets to your tool, it's tired, it's lost its punch. If you want real performance, you need a head-end distribution system, hard lines. When I plumbed this shop, I went with threaded black pipe.
Okay, hold on. Black pipe? That sounds like a nightmare to install. I've seen people use copper, and I've seen those rapid Airpex kits. Why go through the struggle of threading heavy iron when you could just zip tie some plastic to the wall?
Because I like things that stay where I put them. Look, black pipe is the ironclad old school way. It's incredibly strong, and it actually helps cool the air down, which drops the moisture out before it hits your tools. But I'll be the first to admit, it's a workout. I spent 3 days elbow deep in cutting oil and pipe wrenches.
And the local hardware store probably saw you coming and started locking the doors. Here comes the man who needs 42 90-degree elbows and a gallon of pipe dope.
They actually threaded the long runs for me for free. But here's the lesson I learned the hard way. Your layout matters more than the material. Most people run a stub line, just one long pipe with a dead end. But if you want consistent pressure everywhere, you build a ring main. It's a giant loop. That way, the air can get to your tool from 2 directions at once. It's like having a 2-lane highway instead of a dirt path.
A ring main. Okay, that makes sense. It balances the load. But let's talk about the elephant in the workshop. Water. You mentioned the wet sneeze earlier. How do we keep the swamp out of our spray guns?
This is where most DIY setups fail. When you compress air, you're squeezing the humidity out of it like a wet sponge. If you don't give that water a place to go, it goes into your expensive tools. My secret? All my drops, the vertical pipes that go down to the workstations, they don't come off the bottom of the main line. They come off the top in what we call a gooseneck.
Wait, so the air has to go up and over to get to the tool?
Exactly, water is heavy. It wants to stay on the floor of the main pipe and slide right past the workstation. Then, at the very end of the line, you put a drop leg with a drain valve at the bottom. Once a week, you walk around, crack those valves, and let the shop spit out the gunk. It's strangely satisfying.
It sounds like you're giving the shop a physical. Cough for me, Tiger.
Pretty much. But if you're serious, like if you're doing CNC work or high-end finishing, You need a refrigerated dryer or at least a good desiccant filter. I once lost a 3-day finish job on a walnut humidor because a single drop of water hit the lacquer right at the end. I nearly threw the spray gun through the window.
I've been there. Not with spray guns, but with plasma cutters. Water in a plasma line is basically a death sentence for your consumables.
Oh, absolutely. It turns your plasma arc into a sputtering mess. It's like trying to cut steel with a damp match.
So, if I'm building this today and I don't want to spend my weekend wrestling with iron pipe and oil, what's the Alex-friendly version? Those blue PEX-style kits look too easy to be good. What's the catch?
Honestly, those rapid air or aluminum systems are fantastic. They've come a long way. They don't rust, they're incredibly easy to install, and they have very low friction. The only catch is cost. You pay for that convenience. But if it saves you 2 days of swearing at a pipe threader, it's probably the smartest money you'll spend.
Okay, let's talk maintenance. We've got the tank, we've got the ring main, we've got our goosenecks. What is the one thing people forget once the system is done?
The oil and the leaks. A tiny hiss in your shop is essentially a small hole in your wallet that never stops bleeding. In a big industrial shop, they can lose 15% of their electricity just to air leaks. At home, it just means your compressor kicks on at 3 a.m. and scares the cat.
And your spouse. I've definitely had that. What was that bang in the garage? Conversation at midnight.
It's the worst. My rule is, if I can hear a hiss, I fix it. And for the love of all things holy, change the oil in the pump. People treat compressors like refrigerators. They think they just run forever without a drop of grease. But those pistons are moving fast, Alex. They're getting hot. Give them some fresh synthetic oil once a year, and that machine will probably outlive both of us.
So, the Tiger Den takeaway for the day?
Don't just buy a compressor, build a system. If you take the time to mount it somewhere quiet, plumb it with a loop, and manage the moisture, your air becomes a silent partner instead of a screaming annoyance. It's about making the work feel effortless. When you can just reach for a hose and have perfect dry air without thinking about it, that's when you've really mastered your space.
Well, I'm off to go untangle my yellow noodle pile and start sketching a ring main.
Just make sure you get the goosenecks right, Alex. Your plasma cutter will thank you.
I'll try, but if I end up covered in cutting oil, I'm calling you.
I'll have the degreaser ready. See you in the shop.